Okay, welcome back, my friends. It is time again for another State of the Game. This is going to be the second of this year. It depends on how you really look at it. Maybe this is the first reviewing of the month, but anyway, regardless, welcome back. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with my State of the Game podcast style recordings, these are longer because we're going to take the time to review the events of January, as well as preview the events that are coming up for February. And what's on deck for today, we're going to go ahead and first get into the Power Creep Tracker. We'll keep an eye on where we're at for that in the new year. And also, I am going to begin tracking the number of new released characters per month as well, so that'll be fun. Then we'll move into a review of the Season of Love, what we're thinking of the new characters and how that event's gone, and so on and so forth. Then we have the Titan Hunter Portal. We'll take a moment to speak about that, and I have some thoughts on that I'll share with you all. We have the Costume Chamber update. We, of course, have brand new stylish costumes, so we got to talk about that, right? How could we not talk about that? Then the Bazaar Portal was released. This is a pretty cool way for us to start getting some mimics that we may have missed out on in the past, so I go through that with you as well. And then the Beowulf Moth Challenge, we'll follow that. This was a very cool challenge, probably the best heroes yet offered through a Gem Challenge portal. And then we'll have the quality of life updates, the meta changes, and of course our February calendar preview. So we'll go through all of that. Those last three sections, they're pretty much the same every month. Mostly that's just to prepare us to make sure we know what's happening before and what comes next. So thank you again for tuning in. And just a reminder, this is a longer podcast, but it comes out once a month. So you may pause it whenever you need and come back to it. But there are people out there who are enjoying these longer format videos. So that is what I am working on and making sure that I keep up with as well. All right, so without further ado, let's move into our first section and go from there. All right, so our Power Creep Tracker. This is where we like to start things off each month to take a look at where we're at for Power Creep. If you are unfamiliar with the mechanic of Power Creep, I will just sort of fill you in real quick. It is basically a device that allows new heroes to constantly be better than older heroes. They do this in the form of the CP of the character, and it will continue to rise with each new release of characters, and this is how you ensure that your new developed characters are more sought after than old developed characters. It's a marketing ploy, but it is also how microtransaction games like Empires and Puzzles continue to exist. So this is a necessary evil, but it's a question of how they control the power creep. Is it too high? Then our heroes are going to fall off way too quickly, and that's a bad thing for everyone. Honestly, it is. You want to get quite a bit of longevity out of these heroes. I'd like to see a life cycle of no less than 2 years out of these heroes, so just keep that in mind. So we'll go ahead and get into this. Now, just so you know, after years of playing this game, I came to the conclusion that I think an adequate and appropriate power creep for this game is 10 CP a month. If we can stay at the 10 CP marker or 120 CP a year, I think that we will continue to see progression of new characters and the cycle that's necessary to keep the game alive, but also a longevity in our characters that will allow them to exist and function within your roster for the appropriate amount of time, which is at least the 2-year mark. So just keep that in mind. 10 CP is where we want to be at. Now, where did we fall for January? Well, after looking at things, there was an 11 CP growth over the course of January. So, of course, because this is the first month of the year, our year-to-date CP growth will still be at 11. And then I'm also this year starting out with tracking the number of newer heroes released each month. Now, that being said, this tracked number will only include heroes that are part of this power creep cycle. So what do I mean by that? There are certain heroes that don't fall into this. Your hero of the months, they do not mess around with the CP tracker because they release lower than the normal CP, so you wouldn't count them. It doesn't count the Costume Chamber heroes who are released above the CP curve. They're currently sitting at 1700 as opposed to, I think, the 1660-ish range that new heroes are being released at. So those characters I don't count because they live outside of the normal mechanic of the CP growth that we see. So over the course of January, we had 18 new heroes released that were part of the regular CP cycle. So if you notice, with 18 heroes released and an 11 CP growth, we didn't get a 1 CP growth for each new hero released. Part of this is because some of them are released at the same time, like the Valentine's Day heroes. There were 3 new, well, technically 2. I didn't count the costume as a new released hero either. I should say that. I'm also not necessarily counting costumes as new releases. They are just an additional augment to the system. So, but like Valentine's Day, in this case, released 2 heroes at the same time at the same CP level, so that wouldn't have necessarily justified them each getting 1 CP up from the last. But either way, 18 new heroes, 11 CP growth is an acceptable range of things. And I think if we continue to see this moving forward over the course of the year, we're going to be right on track for where we want to be. Okay, so that's it for our CP growth tracker for this particular month, and we will move into the next topic. Okay, and next up, let's go ahead and get into our brand new event for this particular month, which is going to be the Season of Love. It is back again, and they did kind of change this around. There was a time in which Lunar New Year came before Season of Love, but those days have passed. We're no longer dealing with that, and now Season of Love comes first and leads up into about Valentine's Day, in which case Lunar Festival will then kick in and run in the time after Valentine's Day. So what did we get this year around for the Season of Love? Well, they have 3 new featured 5-star to focus on. 2 of them are brand new. One is a costume. We are actually finally seeing a costume for Cupido, who is a very interesting character. I'm glad he's getting a costume. He was always very good at being a control character. Operating at average speed wasn't super fast, but he did shoot the target in nearby and make them all cast Mindless Heal. And this is a very strong swing. If you're able to affect 3 of your opponents at the same time, and it lands on all 3 of them, it really can affect a fight in a very positive way for you. So I think in reality, him getting a costume, we will see him used again. Don't be surprised if you run into a lot of Cupidos in your raiding experience, because he is a very interesting character to work with. So you've got that. A pretty solid hit 3, the crowd control effects, and they even changed his class to fighter. So now he resurrects on top of everything else. He has a pretty good setup. Can't complain about that. We also have Lempi, as you can see. She was put here as the headliner featured character. She was an interesting one, but I mean, mostly just a counter character, right? So they get a very fast hit all, which is fine. It's not overly powerful, but it's fine. Also did a priority dispel, but only have 1 effect. So priority dispel is always useful. I'm just not sure 1 effect is enough. But listen, no one complains about priority dispel, the hit all, and then she does a counter effect so that boosted health landing on your opponents for the following, I think it's 2 turns, it changes into max health reduction instead. So this is why I say she's mostly a counter character. You're really trying to use her against boosted health healer teams, and you're trying to swing the board, take away their healing, turn it into max health reduction again, and then just sort of rule the battlefield. I think she'll be very useful for savvy players who know how to execute that plan correctly, but due to the 2-turn limitations on that, you really need to know your timing, and you really need to be on top of paying attention as to when you're using this character, but I do think she will be good for the savvy player. Now, last but not least, they added Vernon, and I think Vernon might be the best of these new featured that they put out. He is going to be a hit the edges of the formation character. He's also going to slap Mindless Heal on the 2 people on the edges of the formation, and then they're also going to share damage with the rest of the party. So in reality, it's a great way to try to control and maintain the outer edges of your enemy's formation. It also makes the shared damage allow you to focus on killing the center 3 and still end up taking out the outer edges as well. It's a pretty cool character. I would love to get my hands on Vernon, but so far the Season of Love has been pretty stingy with me when it comes to 5-star pulls. All right, so there you have it. I was kind of curious if they were going to do anything else with Season of Love when it comes to a more creative event, but we mostly got the same stuff we've seen before. So you clear through, you get a couple hero tokens. Not particularly exciting, but that being said, I'm not going to give them too hard a time, because they did, at very least, make sure to have a raid brawl for the Season of Love heroes, and that allows you to at least collect 15 epic hero tokens for just completing the raids within that time frame. Now, it is 100 raids, but you get like a month to do 100 raids. It's really pretty easy to pull that off. As long as you're trying even slightly to get your daily quests done, you will get to your 100 raids before the end of the month. So that's really mostly what I had to say about this. Some very interesting characters. I did enjoy being able to get the epic hero tokens, and I think giving people access to these seasonal characters is a fantastic way to go, because they are pretty good these days. Like, they've made their CP leveled out with the new heroes that are released. I do think their specials lag a little bit behind in the amount of damage that they put out compared to some of the newer heroes from other portals. But listen, you've got to understand that these guys were never necessarily meant to be the premium cream of the crop heroes of the game. They were always meant to be sort of a step below, but they've really lessened how much of a step below they are, and I do think that was the right call and the right choice from Empires and Puzzles, and has been really good for the player base as well. All right, so I think that's what we're going to say about this. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. Okay, and next up, let's go ahead and get into the Titan Hunter portal. That's basically what we're looking for here. The Titan Hunter portal is a very interesting addition that they added to the game this past month, which I'm having a hard time with in a lot of ways. And I'm going to go ahead and do my best to explain my thought process here. I get the general concept of what they're trying to do with this portal. Basically, they're saying, hey, look, Titans are a significant part of this game. People are going to want heroes that are good at Titans specifically, and maybe if we just put them all in a portal, people will pull from that portal to improve their Titan aspect of the game. So in theory, all of that makes a lot of sense. Now in practice, this is where I'm starting to have an issue with what they've created here, because we've now seen the Titan portal up 2 times, right? Each time they have released a singular hero for this Titan portal as a new release. But that's it, right? So at this point, we've gone through 2 of these portals, and we only have 2 featured members of this Titan Hunter family. And in all reality, they didn't release anything else except for some older heroes in this particular portal. Now, I'll say that's not one of the more expensive portals at 300 gems per, and, 10 pulls, 2,600. But here's my question. What was the real thought process here? Because I think this was thrown together last minute and not really a lot of thought was put in on their part. I also believe that the heroes that are featured in this particular portal weren't designed for this Titan Hunter summon at all, but rather was the next family that was meant to be released in the Monster Island portal. And hear me out. A lot of you probably pieced this together yourself because of how similar these cards are in their styling to Monster Island heroes that have already been released. The card edges have special art. They're part of a hunter family, like the Plains Hunter family or the Jungle Hunter family, etc., right? So even their aesthetics look very familiar to the artwork that we've seen on Monster Island already. So it seems incredibly obvious to me that these guys were originally designed to be part of that aesthetic of the game. But rather than release them there in Monster Island, maybe because they just don't run Monster Island enough, they figured, let's release these in a brand new portal called the Titan Hunter Summon, and we'll say it's a good place to get Titan heroes. And here's my thoughts on this. These 2 heroes that were released, I'm not sure that I feel like they are particularly amazing Titan heroes. Like, I don't necessarily think they're bad, but I don't think they're going to be anything that shines like a Gasteel or a Pharah or something like that, right? Those characters are clearly good Titan hunting heroes. And these guys are okay, but again, this is just what makes me feel like they were probably more suited for Monster Island than necessarily a specific Titan killing portal. But regardless, this is what we get. This is what we have. So my question really becomes, where are they going to go with this portal from here? Because whenever they've released new portals recently, they've done the service of creating several heroes of a family to be released at one time to sort of give the portal a chance to pull these characters, right? In this case, by releasing one at a time, when this portal first came out, there was only one possible featured hero for the entire portal that you could have gotten, which was weird, right? That's just clearly weird, because odds are if you pull a 5-star in this portal, there's a very good chance it's not the featured. I mean, it might be, it could be, but there were way more non-featured 5-stars in here to pull from older families, etc., and it just seemed odd to me. So look, if you're going to move forward with this, right, if you're going to continue the Titan Hunter summon, I need a little something more. Or how about this? Even if you're not going to create something more specific to the theme of this portal, maybe we just need to make sure there's at least an event for people to try to work towards to get pulls here. Because the truth is, most accomplished players have most likely collected a decent Titan hunting team, and they don't necessarily need this portal. Where this portal probably appeals is the player who's still working on achieving that part of the game. So these are some of your lower end players who are trying to build up a roster. But for them, like, they're probably not huge spenders, etc. Like, give them the free pulls so that they can hopefully have a chance of getting some of these heroes, which would be very significant for their game development. I don't know if it's so important for some of the later game. So that's my thought process there. I'd like to see where they're going with this, but I would also like them to consider the importance of what it would be like for someone to pull from this portal and who is pulling from this portal. And that's why I'm suggesting giving an event or a way to get some coins for a couple free pulls each time this comes up will be a more engaging experience for the player base you're trying to target with this individual portal. And hey, look, if you can get them in 1 or 2 of these 5-stars, right? Maybe they'll start pulling more and more out of this portal to collect more for family bonuses, etc. Like, that's really where it's all about. So it's kind of like a loss leader. If they're listening right now, I'm telling you, it's not the worst idea I've ever heard. Okay, so I think that's enough to go over for the Titan Hunter Summon. I'm still a little confused about it. I'm still questioning whether it needs to exist. And I also feel like these guys justifiably should be in Monster Island. So there you have it. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next section. All right, so next up, let's talk about our brand new costume portals that have been released. Okay, so the costume chamber is not necessarily brand new. I should rephrase that. It is the costumes that are being released that is brand new, and with the release of the stylish costumes for the heroes in this portal. Now, this does create an interesting situation because this is going to be, let's see, the 5th costume for these Season 1 heroes. 5 costumes is absolutely bonkers. Don't get me wrong, I do think it's important that they continue to increase the strength of these Season 1 characters to keep them relevant. I think that was a good idea. But this process of releasing more and more costumes to keep them up to date and relevant, whereas I like it, it does create a bit of a problem now that we are up to 5 costumes, right? Because let's say, for example, I'm a new player who pulls a stylish 5-star hero, but I've never played before, so I am starting from scratch on this hero, and I have to level not only the base, but 5 costumes all the way up to 80 before I max out my stats for this character. That right there is a tremendous amount of time, especially for a newer player. Look, I think we all know that as you progress through this game, you start finding more efficient ways to gather resources and speed up your leveling processes, etc., 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 right? That's normal. That's how it should be. I'm not complaining about that. But what I'm trying to explain and what I'm trying to say here is that newer players that pull a hero from this portal and have to go through the process of leveling 5 costumes on top of a base are going to be so lost in how long that takes. Like, we're talking probably a 3 to 4 month process for them to max out a single character. What are we doing to these poor people, right? So I don't know what the solution to this is, because the system they have in place clearly functions in this way, and I do understand that it needs to function in this way. But maybe there's some sort of way that, like, allows you to get maybe a couple of the costumes, like the oldest ones, at 80 when you pull it, right? I understand the base could still be level 1, so you have to level the base up. And maybe there's a way that you can, like, not activate those costumes until the base gets to 80 as well. Like, maybe you just can't select them until the base is at least the same level as the costume. Fine. But, like, speed this along a little bit, for goodness sakes. Like, nobody needs to be leveling 5 costumes and a character for pulling a new hero. It's just unnecessary. But that being said, let's talk about these new costumes in general and the benefits and the cool things about them and all that. First of all, one, we do get to get some interesting looking characters. This is a 4-star, obviously. We have Kamon here, but I do like Kamon quite a bit, and I think he is rocking a look. I'm not sure exactly what the look is, but he's rocking it. Like, he's definitely looking stylish there. He even flared out his hair with a little bit of green, so why not? Why not, right? And let's also talk about the new passive that came along with these guys. The stylish passive is changing things up a little bit. It still functions on a percentage base effect, so it's a 65% chance in this particular case to flip debuff or negative effects into positive effects. So this is quite interesting to me. We have lots of ways that this comes into play. So if, for example, you get defense down, it has a 65% chance to turn that defense down, flip it around, and do a positive defense up. Let's say you get negative attack down, same thing. It has a 65% chance to flip that and do attack up. Negative mana gen, 65% chance to turn into positive mana gen. I think there's even a 65% chance to turn fiends into minions instead for your character. So that's a very powerful counter to the veggie teams that are out there right now. If you're instead turning their, fiend they try to create each turn into minions instead, that's certainly a very powerful swing for you and a very negative effect for them. So really cool stuff. Very powerful in a lot of ways to ensure that this character stays on point. There's no way you can put heal reduction on them, stuff like that. Now, let's talk about where this passive, or this new passive, ends up falling a little bit short. Although it is incredibly cool to flip all of these negative effects into positive effects and make your character even stronger, what this fails to really give you adequate protection from is dots. Dot damage is not going to be affected or flipped into something positive unless, and I will stress unless, that dot comes with some sort of additional effect. Like, let's use the Untold Tales Frost Core and Flame Molten Core, right? So the Molten Core, when it hits, is going to ultimately do a dot on you, but also do a defense down effect, right? Well, because that dot damage is going to be tied to a stat effect, there will be a 65% chance that you will not take that damage, but instead flip that debuff into a defense up effect instead, because of the fact that there's a stat related effect going on as well. Now, this only works on the dot effects that affect stats in some way. If it is just a pure damage dot, there's no protection against that. It's just going to go right through and land, period, right? So I know a lot of you are like, well, that's weird, because season ones, they either have had their tunes where they have a 75% chance to resist, or they had glass that was a 60% chance to reflect. right? And Reflect is awesome. Like, send it back to them instead. Super cool. All of those protections are gone here. A dot is just going to come right through land and tick off every turn. There's not a lot you can do. Stylish does not give you that protection. It also doesn't necessarily give you protection from things like Mindless Attack. Mindless is going to slip right through because it's not the type of effect that you can flip and turn into a positive effect, right? So things like that can go through. Silence, I think, would work in the same way. Silence is going to go through, and there's not really any type of protection or way to flip that into a positive effect for yourself. So these are honestly the type of things that you have to take into consideration. So the real question then becomes, what costume is the best to use for Season 1s? Look, I think we all know that the point of pulling these additional costumes is to get the stat boost, right? But that stat boost will then apply across all the costumes as long as you continue to level them and max them out. So, yeah, I think everyone wants to increase the strength of their Season 1s, but which costumes are we going to see used more often? Well, there's a pros and cons to each and every one, right? I think that offensively, Glass is probably still the best. It allows you to bypass defensive buffs. It's allowing you to do, solid hits. It does give you some protection during the attack hits as well to reflect it back on the defenders. It's a pretty cool thing. Now, on defense, I'm a little bit more torn. On defense, I don't know if I still think Tune might be the better way to go. Just that 75% chance to resist everything is super useful, including mana reductions, etc. Like, it's very useful. I do use Tunes on offense too, against teams that do a lot of mana reduction. It is one of my main ways to fight that as well. So I don't know. I guess it really just depends on what you're looking at. But as for whether I think stylish costumes are ultimately more effective on offense or defense than the Glass or the Tunes, I don't know if I feel that way. Truth is, in Wars of Recent, I think I've just been using Tunes for their resistance against mana reduction and other effects like Bernadette, Cursed Paintings, etc., etc. So, I'll probably just keep the stat boost and continue using Tunes and call it a day. That's my personal opinion on that. Now, these stylish costumes, maybe with some time, I'll change my mind. I have not been lucky enough at this point to pull a 5-star stylish. I do have 3 and 4 stars that I've picked up, and I will start using those in events and kind of get a feel for stylish costumes that way. But we'll see. I'm sure eventually I'm going to pull some stylish costumes. I'll probably enjoy playing around with them and seeing how it goes. But for now, I'm not sold as stylish being a guaranteed upgrade over using some of the other costume variations. Okay, so there we have it there. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. Okay, so next up, we have ourselves the Bazaar summon that was also released this month. Lots of new portals, honestly. Quite a few new portals this month around, and that's fine. The Bazaar one is something that we kind of knew was on its way. This is more or less the Mimic portal. We could just call it that because in reality, that's what we're looking at. It's going to be full of the Mimics. And I think that that's an interesting way to go. Look, here's the thing. I think Mimics have been a very intriguing addition to this game in a lot of ways. I've had a few discussions across several different platforms about people's opinions on Mimics, the pros, the cons, etc. What I'm going to do is, look, I understand everyone's entitled to their opinion, but what I'll do is I'll share my own. I'll give my thoughts. That's what I do here, is I give my thoughts on all of these things. So let's kind of go into it. What do I think has been the positive contributions of Mimics in this game? Well, first and foremost, I think that it has greatly improved the farming experience, at least for myself, in this game. I used to find farming a very tedious process, and it didn't necessarily feel like I was rewarded for the amount of time that was needed to be invested into farming for it to be a worthwhile experience in the game. I do think that having Mimics and the chance to get things like Aethers and Master Emblems out of just standard farming creates a certain desire to want to do that farming. Master Emblem Mimics, so far, I think have probably been my favorite because of the way they pay out. You do see Master Emblems fairly often. And by that, I mean, if I do my standard farming daily, I can usually see a couple a day. But mind you, I have 2 of the Master Emblem Mimics, and I run them both in my farming team. But still, I will usually see 2, maybe even 3 a day if I push a couple flasks worth of farming, and I normally do if I can get away with it. So just keep that in mind. That's a cool thing to go. As for the Aether Mimics, look, I love them too. I just really would love to have a discussion with them about coughing up a little bit more valuable Aethers, because 3 and 4 star Aethers seem to drop from them fairly regularly, but once you get to the 5 stars and the alphas, I've had Aether Mimics for a little bit over a month now of farming, and I have seen exactly one 5-star Aether and one Alpha Aether, and I do quite a bit of farming. So I think that they have really toned down the drop rate on the Aether Mimics quite a bit, and I would like to see them up that a touch, because really the 5-star and the Alphas are really what everyone wants from them. The 3 and 4 stars, most of us probably had enough of those already to begin with, so I don't think we're gaining that much out of that, if that makes sense. Anyway, point is, I will say this. Even the chance of getting something significant out of farming makes the farming experience much more tolerable, in my personal opinion. Okay, so farming, wonderful way to go. I also believe that Mimics have been a really fantastic way for moderate spenders to increase their roster depth. And what do I mean by moderate spenders? Well, look, big spenders, you probably got the Mimics too, but let's be realistic. You've got better hero options, right? You probably have a much deeper roster, and you don't necessarily need to use Mimics in a combat experience role. But I would say there's quite a few players who maybe only spend a little bit here and there who have managed to get their hands on a Mimic, and the leveling cost was really very reasonable. Like, it didn't require very much. It's the same as like leveling a single costume when it comes to the limit break materials and the Aethers required to max it out. So with that in mind, you see a lot of double limit mimics out there double limit broken mimics out there, simply because it doesn't cost very much to get there, and you get a high CP character that does very reasonable damage in combat experiences. Now, I will say they aren't my immediate go-to. Like, I have other things that I would rather use first, but when you're fielding 6 war teams, right, that means you need 30 heroes that you can spread across those 6 war teams. If you're only a moderate spender, maybe you've got some old stuff that's fallen off, or maybe you are still putting some 4 stars in your roster to get all the way to 30. That's where the Mimic is really going to come in and create a very valuable experience for that player to get a much stronger option with a very reasonable leveling cost in mind. So I do think that for combat experience, it has been a real plus, but only for the player that actually can use the Mimic to their advantage. Like I said, the high spender with a much deeper roster doesn't care, but everyone else probably does. All right, and let's see, what else should we go into for this? I do appreciate the cost of the Mimic portal. They put that in. It's not going to be that expensive, right? It's one of the cheaper portals in the game, and I appreciate that, because here's the thing. This Mimic portal did something that was very wise, I think, on their part, and that's where they let you select whatever Mimic you want from this to kind of choose what color or which thing you're particularly after at that moment. You can create your own featured, and this is intriguing because due to the color limitations of Mimics, etc., it's not fun to pull a Mimic that's not the color you're looking for. So, like, I think being able to select that makes it an appealing process, and leaving the buy-in cost as one of the lower portals is also a nice way to go, because it allows people to reach these points a little bit easier than some of the more expensive premium portals out there. They specifically released this Mimic portal right around the same time they did the last Gem Challenge poll, which, honestly, we will get into the Gem Challenge poll. I'm going to review that as well, but I'll say this. I was very happy that they did them at the same time, and I can only imagine it was, in a way, intentional, right? Because the amount of portals that were out for that last poll was not amazing, but it did have this as a cheap option for people to buy into, and I think a lot of people considered that. I think a lot of people did 30 polls in this Mimic portal very specifically to participate in the Gem Challenge poll and just get what they wanted from a guaranteed 5-star hero. That combination was cool. And on the plus side of things, maybe they pulled a Mimic or two in the process. So, very cool stuff. The other things to consider about the new Mimic portal, we should touch on the fact that there are now 3 and 4-star Mimics. The 3-star, I appreciate. The 3-star is going to be an experienced Mimic, which will give you feeders. Look, how do I explain this? The feeders are nice, okay? Like, for those of you wondering if you should invest or level up your 3-star Mimic, I think you probably should. I think you do put it in your farming team, and I think you take those extra feeders to help push your leveling of other characters. They're not very strong, but due to the fact that they'll hide themselves in their little hidey hole when they cast their special, they don't die that often. And really, all they need to do is exist there in your farming team for you to get the benefits of the additional feeders from them. They will drop feeders of any color as well, so you're not limited to just red feeders like the 5-star Mimics would do. This little 3-star guy is going to drop feeders from every color. So, yeah, definitely worth considering leveling up that 3-star to shove into your farming team if you have not done so already. The 4-star Mimic, however, I'm a little bit more disappointed with. The Ascension Mimic is not that great, but I will say this. For our really low player, right? For our free-to-play player, or someone who is just starting this game, who is stuck behind the early roadblocks of, like, scopes or tabards, etc., I can see some value in this 4-star Mimic pull, because you can start collecting those to break through that initial barrier that can hold you back from getting up to the Aethers level. That was something that I struggled with. I mean, at this point, I've been playing for, I think, 3 years. So, like, I definitely have moved well past that point. But I remember the very first year I played, it was a very challenging process to get past all of these initial leveling barriers, to get to the point where I could even fully participate in events, to get the free pulls, to try to increase my roster, etc. It was quite the arduous process. And in fact, if I didn't have an invested reason in someone that I knew also playing this game, I don't know if I would have made it through that first year without being frustrated and just being like, why am I even doing this? But I did want to participate in continuing to play so I could play with, people that matter to me. So, like, I get that, and that's fine. But I will say this 4-star Mimic, I think that's really the most value in it, is getting past that initial hump. But once you're past that, you probably just don't need those Ascension mats as much as other things. So, I guess that's that. Now, I guess the next question becomes, will there ever be an event that's released for these Mimics? Are we going to find a way to get a couple of free pulls here and there to try to get this? Because the most negative thing that I have to say about Mimics at this point is that I feel bad for the purely free-to-play player. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, the fact is, in order to participate in these Mimics, you probably had to buy some pulls here or there. Yes, you could save up, and yes, there are some savvy players that probably have saved up and gotten Mimics, etc. But I do think it's a lot harder for the truly free-to-play player to participate in getting the amount of Mimics that you would like to have to create a farming team and benefit from them in the maximum way possible. That is my biggest concern, is because whereas it has greatly increased my experience as a player for farming, I just don't know if the free-to-play players or the low-spend players really have that same potential. They're probably still stuck with very boring farming with minimal, if any, Mimic potential. So again, this is where I would like to see an event put into play so that even these lower players have a chance to get one of these and increase their own potential farming, because the truth is, this is a fix to how boring and how pointless farming felt, but only for those that were able to participate and spend and hopefully pull a Mimic, right? Does that make sense? So I would like them to put the event in there for the lower players to have a chance, at least a prayer, to get themselves some Mimics as well. And I guess the last thing that I wanted to go into for this particular one is just, where are they going to go with this portal next, right? So as we saw from the release of this portal this month, it didn't include all the Mimics. We saw our Experience Mimics and we saw our Ascension Mimics. And there was a lot of chatter about, hey, well, the Emblem Mimics are done. Why aren't they there? Well, I think the reality is that there's going to be a little bit of a time gap from when they were secret summons to when they'll hit this Mimic portal. So I'm guessing that we'll probably see the Master Emblem ones go into this portal maybe when they finish up with the Aether Mimics. Maybe it'll be that sort of stepping process, and then eventually the Aether Mimics will make their way into the portal as well. I don't know, maybe they'll do something like each time the Mimic portal comes up, only 2 types are featured. So maybe last time it only was Experience and Ascension, maybe next time it'll be Master Emblems and Experience and there'll be no Ascension. I'm not sure, but we'll have to see what they do, because they certainly didn't include all the Mimics in the portal. So how they approach that moving forward should be interesting to see. And I think that was the final thoughts that I wanted to add about the Mimic portal. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. We'll go ahead and move on to the next topic as well. Okay, so now let's take a chance to go over the Gem Challenge poll that they offered for this particular month. This was a kind of pricey one to get into. It did require 30 polls, which honestly is not cheap, but I will say this. They did decide to offer probably some of the best characters they've offered in a Gem Challenge poll up until this point. It was a combination of Beowulf and Moth characters. And as you can see on the screen here, I went and I found a picture from when I did the challenge myself. I did choose to participate. It was going to take the majority of all the gems that I had, but I felt like having the guarantee of walking away with one of these 5-star characters was worth the buy-in, because as we all know, when you're pulling from these portals, there's no guarantee you get anything from the pulls that you do. So when you get these challenge pulls that guarantee you a 5-star, there is a lot of value in that. So just to make a long story short, when I did my poll, because of the amount of gems I had, I did it in 3 kingdoms. I didn't quite have enough to get to a Covenant poll, which I would have preferred to do, but the reality is I try to keep myself on a budget for the game, so I try not to dig too deep into my pockets for these things, and I had enough to do the 3 kingdoms. Great characters out of 3 kingdoms as well. I did do a 30 poll. Unfortunately, that 30 poll led to absolutely bubkiss from 30 actual polls. But completing this did allow me to do the challenge event. From it, I pulled Welthero, the yellow healer in that top row from Beowulf family. Now, she is a good hero of her own right. Absolutely nothing bad to say about her as a character, other than the fact that I was not particularly hunting for a healer at the time. So even though there is a guarantee that you're going to get a 5-star hero out of these, it is also important to remember there's no guarantee you'll get the one that you need for your roster. That being said, I'm still leveling her up. I'm still going to use her because she is another fast healer, and honestly, who doesn't need another fast healer? So I will make space for her in my roster, even though she wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. But let's be realistic. When I looked at over these characters, and I tried to find ones that were not great, right? Ones that I thought maybe really didn't excite me very much. It's hard to find them, right? Maybe you can say Limbrore being very slow might not be super exciting, but she is pretty interesting, and she does put everyone into a deep sleep, which is a far more effective control system than regular sleep, since they need to take 500 or 600 damage before they wake up, something like that. So I do think even that's a pretty good character, all in all. You get a nice counterattacker in the top row. Some people don't like her very much, but I do love the fact that she does mana delay each time she counterattacks. She's going to reduce a bit of mana. It's really cool for her and the nearby allies. Grendel, maybe if I had to search for another one that's not super exciting, it might be Grendel, but I will say this. Grendel is still very good for an elemental defense down character, which you can then stack a couple other fast greens with and do some very do quite a bit of damage very quickly and finish off your opponent. So I think Grendel really needs to shine with partner characters that can take advantage of his elemental defense down, fire him off first, get a stronger effect from your follow-up hits, and then hopefully by the time you get your specials off, if they're all fast, they should go off at the same time in theory. You can really wreck them in one turn and kind of finish the fight off with the remaining turns after that. So I don't know, it's hard to say any of these are very bad characters. If you did participate in this, I certainly hope that you were able to get something that you were excited about. For those of us who are perhaps not big spenders or completely free to play, I do understand that a 30 pull is frustrating because you feel like that is just a mountain that you barely can imagine climbing, right? Like, and I get that, but I will say this: these 30 pulls are going to always be offering the greatest heroes of the pools, right? Because they're not going to give you the very best heroes in the 10 or the 20. They're going to save them for the 30 pull challenges. So with that in mind, I encourage you, if you're free to play or if you are just a low spend player, consider the fact that these challenges do exist and that they will be coming around. And although it may not be fun to wait and be patient for them to come around, just imagine the idea of whether you save all your gems, you aren't distracted by other things. You wait for a portal like this to appear, you wait for a challenge like this to appear, and then you use the stockpile gems you've built over a month or 2 or 3, I don't know, it depends on how long it takes for us to get back around to a 30 pull, and then you have a shot at gaining one of these characters guaranteed. Now, I know what you're saying, like that's a long time to wait, but look, if you are free to play, if you are a low spender, understand that, like I said, I did a 30 pull, I got Bubkiss from 3 Kingdoms out of 30 pulls. So the only reason that I walked away with anything on this day is because of the fact that there was this 30 challenge pull. And it guaranteed me a 5-star hero, so my roster has improved, regardless of the fact that that 1.5% chance or whatever it is in 3 Kingdoms really didn't do anything for me. I was still able to get something. And this matters. Like, understand that this matters, and it will really help our players that don't have a chance to get pulls very often to not waste their time just throwing a random dart at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? Like you can be guaranteed to walk away with a 5-star hero and one of significance if you are willing to wait and invest in these larger pulls. So that's my advice there. Whether or not you have the self-control and the patience to wait that long, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you, it's tough. Like, it's tough. They've put out so many flashy, cool new heroes that you're just like, I want to try for that one, and I want to try for that one, and so on and so forth. But this same process is the same advice that I give to people who are hoping to get more mimics. Like, you want to save your pulls, right? Like, don't just do your pulls willy-nilly. Wait for the mimic day to roll around, and then do all your pulls on the mimic day, because then you have the same chance to pull something, but you also get a chance to increase your roster with mimics. I am not a big spender in this game by any means, but at this point, the strategy of holding my pulls and waiting until mimics come around has left me with 6 mimics at this point. And that's not bad, right? Like, I have more than a full team's worth. Now, granted, there's been a lot more mimics I didn't get, but I mean, 6 has been a pretty good take home from that, and I have no complaints. So the strategy does work, and it is helpful, and it's made my farming a lot more entertaining, as we talked about earlier with the Mimic Portal and all of that fun stuff. So really, this is all I had to say about this, is like, these type of events will come around. They are very exciting, and the pool of heroes that they give us are pretty darn good. Like, I don't think there was really any things in here that you couldn't work with. My point is, if you pulled one of these, you 100% could double limit break it and find a way to make it useful for your roster. And that is the type of gem challenge summon I would like to see more of. Even if they're not cream of the crop, give us some really, really solid heroes that we can be excited about. Okay, so that's enough about that. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. All right, so let's go ahead and move into our quality of life changes. So in the quality of life changes, there's a couple things I'd like to talk about this particular time around, and we're going to start out with the Fated value increase. So Fated Summon did come out recently, and with it came a lot of interesting new options. So in Fated, I think first and foremost, a lot of people have been talking about the fact that Daemon has now been released in Fated Summon. He's available for, simply doing your 100 summons, having that pop up, and you can select him. Now, normally I would say this isn't really a huge deal, except for the fact that Daemon was recently in Soul Exchange for 20 souls. So people who wanted to pick him up as a counter character had to invest quite a bit in doing so, and I think they're very frustrated that they spend 20 souls and then he becomes available for a much cheaper option. That's really been most of the drama about this. But I do want to say that regardless of the people who had to do that, and I am sorry for them, I do like that they added Daemon and characters of this nature here. So another good example of value pull out of this is going to be Relius as a Resurrector Owl. I think you get a lot of value out of Relius. Now, again, these characters are still only going to be in the 1300 range. So let's talk about the fact that none of this is going to be like game-changing for today's meta. But for free-to-play players that sort of exist below the meta and want to try to gather a team that does decent stuff in their own personal raid ranks and so on and so forth, I do think you get a lot of value out of the characters they're offering here compared to some of the previous Fated. And I think this is the right step that the game needs to be taking. With the way that the power creep's going and specials getting crazy and all of that fun stuff, you really need to offer people some way to stay relevant even at lower levels, and I think increasing the overall value of Fated is a wonderful way to do it. There are several heroes in here that I would say are worth considering, regardless of your skill level. A lot of them do exist in the Owls or the Clash of Knights options that are there. You can pick up Wolfgang, for example, and he will have a costume available in Costumer very soon. So you can get a nice 1500 character out of there if you pick him up here and then spend your Costumer thing on that. That's an interesting way to go. If you like to play the long game, you can pick up the Julius character from the bottom row. His costume came out not that long ago, probably about a month, maybe a month and a half ago. So you would have to wait a significant amount of time, but this character would be a fun investment to have that you could pick up for a costumer later. I would stash him away and just kind of consider him as an option for the future. Now, if I ended up getting something better or I needed to trade him in for Soul Exchange, etc., no big deal, but I definitely do intend on getting at least one Julius to lock down for a possible costumer event in the future. So just stuff like that. I think it's just fun that they did increase the value that you're getting out of Fated Summon, and I hope that they consider this moving forward as a general rule, because the truth is, having a couple really good options in Fated allows even the lower players to have something fun and exciting to look forward to. So I think that's a good move. Then next up, let's talk about the Costumer. The Costumer came around this month, and we did start getting some much better options opening up. Previous to this, I had made a complaint that Costumer really didn't have a lot to offer. A lot of the heroes that you got from there were still pretty insignificant to the overall effectiveness of your roster. I think that changed a bit with the Dunes costumes opening up here. Quite a few people were able to snag things like Cleopatra as an absolutely massive healer, or I think Hathor was available. I myself got Tetrahede, another Dunes character, but these were all really good characters in the 1500 range that would be reasonable for anyone's roster still. I do think that was much improved over our previous options that were available. Now, we're noting there were other costumes like the Three Kingdoms that were opening up. Diachen was now available for the first time, and I think quite a few people might have had a Diachen stashed away that they picked a costume up for because she's honestly still a very reasonable depth healer. So grats to everyone who picked up a nice copy of Diachen, but there's other Three Kingdoms costumes that you could have picked up here as well. Another very reasonable and viable option. Untold costumes are coming. I'm not sure, maybe one or two might have been available right now. But come the next Costumer, we're going to see a lot more of the Untold 1 costumes available for pickup. So, for example, I know myself, I'm looking forward to getting Medei in the next Costumer. That will be a nice pickup. I had pulled Medei when she first came out, never got the costume, so she's fallen off my roster depth until I get, a costume, and then I can bring her right back into the mix of things. Looking forward to that. I know someone else was really looking forward to getting LaSalle up and going, as they had double limit broken LaSalle and kind of missed having that person in their roster. Again, stuff like that will be useful moving forward. So I do think Costumer is getting a little bit more exciting with the options that are opening up. That being said, I would still really like SG to consider lowering the cooldown on the Costumer to 1 year instead of 18 months. I think in reality it's fine to let people have a year-old character or a year-old costume. It's fallen off enough that you're not really like losing out on that much, but you're allowing people to stay somewhat relevant by making them wait 18 months. A lot of these heroes have fallen off. There is a exception to the Dunes costumes and the Untold 1 costumes because they got double buffed last year. So because of those double buffs, it's allowed them to maintain a certain strength. But in reality, since we haven't double buffed other costumes in the same way, I don't think we're going to get as much value out of other costumes that are 18 months old as we are out of the Dunes and the Untold 1 currently. So just keep that in mind, that this little exciting peak that we're at right now is going to start to taper off unless we have more double buffed costumes that happen. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. All right, next up, new events galore. With January coming out, quite a few things have hit the ground running, right? New portals, new events. I guess I'm counting all of that in this particular thing. So, we had our Titan Hunter summon come out. We had our, our Bazaar summon with the Mimics. We had the Season of Love come out. We had the new costumes for Season 1 come out. These were all things that were just kind of sprinkled down upon us in a rather fast fashion. And I will say this, look, that's not all. Like, they're not done. They're going to continue to push things out at a relatively fast pace because next month, I'm 100% certain we're going to be getting the Veggies Challenge event. So we'll be seeing more Veggies come into play. I know the Lunar New Year that comes out next month will have a new style of event similar to how Halloween went previous, or Moldovia or whatever it's called. So there will be a new style of event to accomplish and do there with new heroes, new family, etc. So that's not to mention all the other new things that are still going, whether it be the Temple Heroes or the Astral Demons, or there is just a lot of new right now. And is it too much is the question. Like, is there so much right now that it's kind of hard to adjust and keep up? I think that might be the case. And I'm seeing that a lot in raids, in wars, etc., is that these new heroes that just keep popping out, there isn't really a lot of time to come up with good counter strategies and how to handle them before you're just slapped with new things that you're unprepared for, and you end up with a lot more losses than you'd really prefer. And I think that we just could, I like new, but I think maybe we could slow it down a notch and let people adjust to what's becoming the new meta rather than just have an absolute madhouse dash of new stuff to keep up with. But that's just my personal opinion. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I like it, but let's just slow it down a little bit. And I think we'll all be okay with that too. All right. So then next up, we have our Titan loot woes. Look, I'm going to keep saying this. I know I sound like a broken record because we're going through this every single month, but what is going on with Titan loot, right? Like, it is a lot of work to kill these high-end Titans, whether you're doing 15 or 16 stars. I'll just say most of us are probably around there. There are going to be some lower alliances, but like if you're doing these, it's a lot of work, lots of items spent, etc., to make sure that these Titans go down, and then the loot payout is pitiful. I mean, honestly, I've gone another month now where I don't know if I got anything of much significance from Titan bounties at all. Maybe I had like one impressive Titan bounty. I think I got one Tomb of Experience this month as a Titan bounty. But that was it. That was like my big win, right? And I just don't understand because we're killing Titans all the time. And previous to this, I was getting things. Like, it's when they did the change where they added the sort of food and iron crates to the loot tables and stuff like that. Ever since that changed to the Titan bounties, I see a lot less valuable Titan bounties going out and a lot more unimpressive ones, if you will. So I'm not a huge fan of that. I really wish they would reconsider this and make it a little bit more exciting for us as a player base, because the truth is, we've got to kill these Titans. It's part of the game. It's tied in with everything else that we do, but like, make the benefit just match the amount of effort necessary. And the 5-star Aethers too, like the drop off in the 5-star Aether drop rate was just unnecessary. I actually think that 5-star colored Aethers are harder to get nowadays than Alpha Aethers. Alpha Aethers, you're guaranteed 2 out of your elemental chests, out of your war chests, etc. Like, there are ways to be guaranteed to get alphas, and I appreciate that. But what's happening is you're creating a lag system because the colored Aethers, the 5-star color Aethers, are actually falling behind because there isn't really guaranteed ways to get those in the same effect. So because of that, like, you're stuck. Like, you're stuck waiting for these 5-star colored Aethers to keep up with everything else. And I do think that Titans was a great way to ensure that you could get a few more of them out there, but no. And the other thing is, like, there's other ways to get a guaranteed 5-star color Aether. Like, one huge missed opportunity is the week-long Mystic Vision. The Mystic Vision you get once a week. You made it drop a 4-star Aether. Why? It's once a week. We waited all week for a 4-star Aether, which is really rather insignificant in the long run of things. Like, just change that to once a week you get a 5-star Aether. How hard is that? And they still have to watch the ad to do it. So like, you're not even 100% guaranteeing it. You're just saying, hey, look, if you watch this ad once a week, you get a 5-star Aether. Like, that's a simple change, but it can at least guarantee 1 5-star Aether a week, right? And you still need like 7 to 8 or 9, depending on if you have costumes for one character. So it's not even like you're giving away that much, but like stuff like that, simple change creates a lot of value. You could say the same thing for like maybe your once a week dragon shipment. You could like guarantee a 1 5-star colored Aether of a random variety. Like these sort of things are the type of rewards that come once a week that I think deserve to have more value to them as opposed to where they're currently at. So just something to consider moving forward. If anyone over at SG is listening, like, we need to find a way to create a little more guaranteed 5-star colored Aethers like we do the alpha Aethers to progress things along. Okay. And then last but not least, I do want to address the fact that there's been rumors going around about new Toon costumes. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, what do you mean new Toon costumes? We did all the Toon costumes. There's no more Season 1 characters to work with. You are correct. That is true. There are no more Season 1 characters to work with. But that doesn't mean that they have to stop there with Toon costumes. From what I am hearing through various sources and people talking in different channels, is that they plan on releasing Toon costumes for 2 aspects of the game. The Legends family, which is the old hero of the months from many moons ago. Think things like Hell, for example, or Season 2. I believe Season 2 was also in the mix for Toon costumes to be coming out. Now, I'll say a couple things here. One, I think Season 2 Toon costumes could be interesting, mostly because I think Season 2 is the forgotten, like, stepchild of this particular Empires and Puzzle 5-star family. There's nothing you could do with a Season 2. Even if you have a Season 2 costume, like maxing out at 1200 is pitiful. Like you're not even going to spend your time, energy, and effort on a character like that. It's just not meaningful. And you got to spend alphas and you got to master emblems all just to get to 1200, which new heroes will surpass at just getting to 80. Right? So, I mean, honestly, they had to do something for poor Season 2. It is just not viable in any way. So I get that. Old Hero of the Months, I'm down with them getting some stat updates in a Toon version 2. Why not? What I'm curious about, because people were saying that this might be re-released in like the Legends portal, like that might come back, and people were predicting that that's where these costumes would come out. All right, well, that's fine. I mean, I'm down with that. But my question is this. Will they consider creating Toon costumes for the Champions family as well? I mean, that would be something I would really look forward to, mostly because I think the Champions heroes were very good. Like, they were very good heroes. But again, they're falling off, and there's not really a lot that can be done about that unless they're offered a costume update of some sort. So maybe that would be a very intriguing high-end thing to look forward to. The Toon costumes for the other things, the old Heroes of the Months and the Season 2, I think that's really just to make sure that they can pretend to be relevant again. And I say pretend because I'll have to wait to see what kind of boost they get from this before I'll claim they can be relevant again, but it's at least a step in the right direction towards relevancy. So that's fine. But I think you'd get some premium options out of having some Toon costumes popped out for the Champions family as well. Gosh, those would be super fun. So I don't know. We'll wait and see. But that's what, we're hearing through the grapevine. Nothing's guaranteed. Let your imagination run wild, but don't get your heart set on this yet, because I do not have 100% guarantee to offer anyone. Just saying what I've been hearing. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our next section. All right, so what do we have on deck this month for meta changes, right? What are we seeing in our raids, our wars, our tournaments, which is causing a little bit of a stir, a little bit of change of pace, things that I would like everyone to be prepared for? Well, I think there's actually a lot to discuss in this particular section here. I'll try to keep it relatively fast, but let's get into the 2 things I think first and foremost are the most concerning or the most important to address. And that's, number 1, the Temple heroes have taken center stage. So the new Temple heroes that have come out with their growth boon has created a absolutely massive amount of damage when these characters do their special. Think things like Banga or Usted, right? They both came out, and when those specials go off, the impact is truly significant, enough so that it can swing the board all by themselves. Why does this matter? Well, I think that there really is a little bit too much damage coming out of these characters currently. It's making for very fast raids because of the fact that if like 2 specials go off in one turn and one of them happens to be a Temple hero, you're usually losing the majority of your players. Like you lose probably 2 to 3 right there in that particular round because of the sheer amount of damage these Temple characters are pushing out. I understand that this is not like an indefinite situation. Right now, we're living at the peak of the Temple characters' effectiveness because they are the newest thing out there. Their stats are as high as they're going to be. Their effective damage is as high as it's going to be. And as stat creep or power creep continues to move forward, their effectiveness is going to slowly whittle down a little bit, right? Like, not a ton, because here's the thing. They have the growth boon. So even though their CP is falling behind the other things, they're getting 100 attack and defense every turn from their growth family effect. So, like, even that, I don't think is going to slow these guys down that much. And that's why I think this is a significant, and the number one thing I'm talking about is the fact that these temple heroes are going to be around for a hot minute, and the amount of damage they're pumping out is going to change the way that raids, wars, and tournaments are fought. Because the truth of the matter is, you now have the potential to just push so much damage that the fight ends before your opponent can really get even started on defense. This has been kind of a thing I've noticed in raids and wars. A couple of my war hits even today, I noticed with these temple heroes going off that I'm like 4 turns in, and all of a sudden I've got 2 specials going off, one of them being a temple hero, and insert random other specials going off in the same turn. And the damage from the temple special is just so much that the follow-up special of any type is enough to usually finish off 2, 3 of my characters before the fight's even really begun. And this is the type of thing that I just don't know if I know how to plan for, right? Like, you can try your best not to set them off, and I get that, but sometimes the tiles dictate the moves that you have to do. It's not that you want to do them, it's just there's really no other choice on the board but to do that. And it's unfortunate, but it is the reality of things, and I don't really enjoy this as the way things are moving right now. Now, I do understand that they're never going to be as strong as they are in this moment, but it is a problem for this moment, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't love that as part of how the meta is going, because in reality, I feel like a couple of my hits kind of got robbed. I never even really had a chance to do much, because the way that the tiles fell, I sort of had to power up those heroes to get anywhere. And I figured, you know what, as long as I can survive these 2 specials going off, I'll be okay, but you just can't. It's too much damage right now for even, your fully leveled troops with your fully leveled heroes with matching troops, etc. So, like, that is a concern to me. I don't think it's a lot of fun to just get your hit blown up within like 4 to 5 turns, but that is what it is. Like, that's the way the meta is right now. So you got to be prepared for this and understand that it's coming, and try to maybe even plan around that when dealing with temple heroes. It's just so much damage so quickly. All right. Next up, the thing that I want to talk about is the combination of Wildcats and Resurrectors. There are more and more teams that I see that are 2 Wildcats, 1 Resurrector, and various other things to help get the kill in. Right now, this is a rather frustrating combination, because even if you're lucky enough to take out Wildcats and not have them resurrect, which does happen on rare occasions. There are times where I have killed Thaffer and he didn't resurrect once, and I was like, holy cow, that's amazing. But you're in a team with a Resurrector, which has a chance to bring them right back. And then when they come back, they have a chance to reactivate their 9 lives. And most likely you're never going to get lucky enough to kill the Wildcat without them resurrecting and starting that whole cycle over again. So here's where the problem lies. It's a lot of nonsense, especially considering there's no particular way to stop a Wildcat from resurrecting with its 9 lives. It's just impossible. So I guess I find it frustrating to pair them with regular Resurrectors as well, because of the fact that there's just no way to create a wedge against 9 lives at that point. Now, the only thing you can effectively do against them is use the Beauty and the Beast heroes with their passive that reduces heroes down to 20% of the health they would have resurrected with. So yes, they come back, but they come back in killable range of tiles, right? So it's just, you can kill them with tiles again, and hopefully you can just keep cycling that killing with tiles before they have a chance to get their special off. But if you don't have someone who's countering how much health they come back with, they're coming back at 50% health each time. Maybe you can kill them once or twice before they have a chance to get their special off, but really, realistically, probably not enough, right? So they're going to get their specials off multiple times and create huge problems. Mostly I've seen this as being a big issue with Thaffer and gosh, why am I blanking on his name? The purple kitty, the utility kitty that does the wither, doesn't do any damage, but like withers you down and reduces your healing. I completely forget his name, but he's a really good utility character that can absolutely devastate you with 400 wither coming off of your attack each time. If you don't have wither counters to that, and this guy keeps popping up and casting that wither over and over again, your attacks are going to start hitting for literally nothing. Like, you're going to be so low in attack that you can't do a gosh darn thing to your opposing team, and then you're going to end up getting like war scores of like 6, because like, even though you took really strong heroes, you got withered into oblivion. So this does create a new demand for things like garrison guards that can clear that wither, even though they've kind of fallen off on defense. All of you people that have the wither garrison guards, I would highly recommend you take them up against like a Wildcat team like that that's stacking the wither effect. Like, I promise you, you need to clear that wither in order to be able to do enough damage to get the kill on that. But like, just understand that double Wildcat Resurrector is going to be a headache that we have to deal with for a long time. If you can get your hands on a Beauty Within character, great, because it makes it a much more manageable situation. But if not, I would recommend talking to your alliance, figuring out who has the right counters for this, and let them try to take those teams on first, because otherwise you may be just tossing flags into oblivion as you try to kill a team that will resurrect in over and over and over and over again. So just keep that in mind. It is a very frustrating sort of meta change that we've seen, but it's okay. That's the thing about the meta. You kind of got to deal with it as it comes, and that's what we're dealing with this month. Like it's either a combination of Wildcats and Resurrectors, or it's so much damage from these Temple heroes that you get wiped out of your hits before you have a chance to get moving. I would say those are the things that I'd want you to look out for the most. The other thing that I would say is in this up and coming month, what I would like you to also prepare for is the fact that the Vigilant Vegetable event is coming out. So with that in mind, we are going to see more Vigilant Vegetables, which means most likely more spreading fiends that are going to be popping out all over the place. And look, it's difficult. They did change it, so I think that there's now only a fiend created every other turn, but they're harder to clear. I think that's the change that they put into effect with these characters. But even so, with more vegetables comes more fiends across the board. So I would fully expect there to be a large surge in the amount of fiends that we're going to see in the meta up and coming for February, because this comes out on the 4th, which is Wednesday. So people are going to start collecting these new vegetables as of Wednesday of this week. And I fully expect, especially our bigger spenders, to not only pull these, but to have them leveled by the weekend, right? By, Friday, Saturday, Sunday this coming week, you're going to start seeing these new vegetables just wreaking havoc in your life as well. So any fiend counter characters that you have, they are still going to have a lot of value right now, even more so with this new vegetable event coming into play. All right, I think that's it. That's all we really want to cover, I think, for this month. That should prepare you. Watch out for the crazy amounts of damage that ends fights within a couple turns. Watch out for the Wildcats Resurrector combo, and then be prepared for fiends. Fiends aren't going anywhere. They're going to be all over the place with our vegetables being added to the game. All right, thanks so much, everyone, and let's move on to the next section. This is the very last section of the State of the Game video that we do every month. It is going to be our calendar review for the up-and-coming month of February 2026. I do want to thank you all for sticking around through the length of the whole podcast-style video here, because I know it can take a while to get through, but I really do hope that you take time to listen to this type of video, maybe while you're at work, working on some mundane tasks, or cleaning around the house, or whatever the case may be. This is designed to listen to when you have a chunk of time, so just keep that in mind, and thank you for participating, and hopefully this continues to grow. I really do like this. I kind of look at this as like a time capsule, to even be able to look back at what was going on like a year ago from today. I want to be able to see where the game was at, and what we were looking forward to, and how it all played out, stuff like that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this for the very last section here, our calendar review for February 2026, and we'll go ahead and start things out by saying that today, being the 1st, we had the 3 kingdoms come around. We still have our red elemental summon, of course, going, and then next week we're going to have Vigilant Vegetables. I thought it was Valiant Vegetables. Anyway, Vigilant Vegetables. The new event is not wasting any time. It is coming out on Wednesday, the 4th. So we will have a chance to collect new vegetable heroes at this point, as well as I expect a stat increase for our current veggies. So if you thought you were handling the veggies well at their current stat level, just understand that they are going to be bolstered right back up with the new releases, as they do oftentimes with these events. So just, unfortunately, they're only going to get stronger. These vegetables are going to be a pain in the patootie, but that is how it goes. All right, so that's starting next week on the 4th. Then we have Costume Chamber returning on the 5th on Thursday. Goodness, okay. So that's exciting too. I do like these new stylish costumes, so no complaints there. We also, on Friday, are going to get our very first Legendary Troop quest. So this first week has got a lot of new, right? New Valiant Vegetables, new costumes for Season 1, new Legendary Troop quest, and we're only at Friday. We also get Shadows of the Deep Portal. So that's not necessarily new, but of course there will at least be one new hero released with that. The Insanity Portal will be coming on Friday as well, and lasting through the weekend. All right, so let's jump down. We covered all of that. So the next thing that will be coming up is the Tower of Magic on Tuesday the 10th. Tower of Magic is fun. I am curious to see if they release a costume this month. Last month they skipped over a costume for the Magic Tower heroes, and I don't know if that was intentional or if they just maybe forgot to put one out, but the reality is there is still 3 Magic Tower heroes that require some love when it comes to having a costume made for them. I suspect that they will get back on track with that, but I don't know. If last month was a tracker or a new trend, we may be done with costumes for a little bit. We shall see. All right, then moving on, we get a Legendary Dragon quest on Friday the 13th. This is the quest that will allow us to get a guaranteed 5-star dragon if you're able to complete the quest, I believe. So that's fun. And who doesn't like getting a guaranteed 5-star, right? Whether it be dragon or regular, it's still fun. All right, then Gosh, is that another costume chamber? A week later? Okay, so right there, you see it says we have a costume chamber starting on Thursday the 5th. It looks like we are getting a second costume chamber starting on Saturday the 14th. So, I mean, back-to-back weeks of costume chamber. Very interesting there. We also get the Astral Plane starting on Sunday. Oops, sorry about that. We also get the Astral Plane starting on Sunday, and we will have Lunar New Year. There we go. Lunar New Year will be starting on Tuesday the 17th. Now, worth noting, this new Lunar New Year event is going to come with a brand new quest similar to the Moldovia quests that came out around Halloween time. So there will be new heroes. You'll be able to collect things like the Sanguine Blood, only I'm sure it'll be called something different for Easter. Maybe you go on an Easter egg hunt. I don't know. But either way, you're going to collect those items. You're going to be able to turn them in for some free pulls, and a new family of heroes will be entered in the mix as well, plus the regular Lunar New Year. So I'm expecting I shouldn't really say a slew, but I'm expecting a fair amount of new things around that time. Maybe for the first time ever, we'll see a 3 and 4 star rotated around the Lunar New Year's events because they never existed previous to this. So that should be interesting to see what they do with that as well. All right, then we get Contest of Elements for Blue. That'll be coming in on Thursday the 19th. Will that be interesting? I don't know. We'll get a new slime, most likely, and some new elemental costumes, or super elemental costumes, mind you. All right. Then on Friday, the 20th, we have the Brave and the Beautiful coming back, so that event is still kicking for Alliance Quest. We'll get some more Brave and the Beautiful characters. I do like this because we're also getting costumes for the old Three Musketeers, and there are some really good Three Musketeer characters out there that getting a costume for would be very exciting for people who already have them maxed, so hopefully we get something interesting. Porthos wasn't necessarily my favorite, but I haven't really had to deal with him yet, so I'm going to reserve full judgment on that guy until after, I see him in action. But I do look forward to things like Cardinal Rishu. I think that would be a great one to get a new costume for. My Lady De Winter, absolute monster that would be very powerful again with a new costume, that sort of thing. So let's see what happens when we get there. All right, then we get Dragon Cave on Friday the 20th as well, and Legendary Troop Quest. Okay, so it looks like they're going to give us 2 Legendary Troop Quests in this first month. This one will be starting on Saturday the 21st as well, so that's cool. Look, I do think it's important to give people a chance to get these 5-star troops a little bit easier. They are such a significant part of being relevant when it comes to raiding and warring that I really think creating greater access to them is sort of important for the overall longevity of the game. So I do like the idea of the troop quest, and I do love that it's happening more than once next month. That's pretty cool too. Then we get another Shadows of the Deep portal coming in at the 24th. So that's interesting and very important here at the end of the month. On the 26th, we'll activate the Soul Exchange event. So as a reminder, it's time to start doing an inventory of how many 5-stars you have available in your roster that you might be willing to trade in to get a brand new hero of your choosing. This is very important. The of your choosing part is the most important part. And as always, when it comes to Soul Exchange, I always recommend that you really look at your roster. Find out what sort of unique utility you're missing. Maybe you don't have enough Dispel characters. Maybe you don't have enough Cleanse characters. Maybe you need a Resurrector or a Healer, or you'd really like a tank for your roster, but you don't have one with Taunt, right? So, these are the types of things where you have the opportunity to look at the available options. There will be 15 of them, 5 in each tier, 5 at 10, 5 at 15, 5 at 20, where you can pick what's going to be the best choice for you and what you need from your roster. Now, will it be the most up-to-date stuff out there? Absolutely not. You're still getting some older material. But when it comes to unique utility, the CP stats don't always mean the most. Sometimes you just need the right piece to finish off a team to make it very powerful. That's where I want you guys to focus for Soul Exchange. Think about what's going to do the best for you overall for your roster and go hunt that particular thing down. Now, I am hoping that we will see an overall increase in the value of the characters listed in Soul Exchange. They did do a good job bringing new value to the Fated Summon that came out. I'd like to see them put that same energy and effort towards this next Soul Exchange list, but seeing as though we have not actually had an approved list out for us to see yet, and there are sources out there that usually give us hints at what we suspect this list will be. And I fully expect that will be coming out soon-ish. Probably in the next week to 2 weeks, we should see a better idea of what might become available so that you can start making your preparations and be ready for the Soul Exchange when it comes around. So that's pretty much it, though. We've made it through the end of the calendar for the month, and it will give us a moment to think about what we are looking forward to for this month, what we would like to prepare for. I do think it will be important to think of a couple things. One, the Vigilant Vegetables are coming out for the very first time. This is a big deal. For those of you who have saved up some challenge polls in preparation of this, kudos to you. For the rest of us, we can always get lucky with a random poll here or there. I don't think I have much saved up because I did try to get a Beowulf character or two before the end of that event. So I'm hopeful that maybe I can get lucky on that. I'm hopeful other people can get lucky. You might want to prepare yourself for what kind of 5-star troops you'd like the most, because with the legendary troop quest out for the very first time, you will have that opportunity to do some polls in that, and you can select whichever troops you want. So think about which ones you would select and which ones would do your roster the best. Prepare yourself for the new Lunar New Year event that's coming up. Again, it will be interesting to see what kind of new stuff they offer. I think I might be most excited for that because I think it is the most achievable. There will most likely be another sort of raid brawl that will give us 15 possible polls towards Lunar New Year heroes, which is cool. And if it's anything like the Halloween event, maybe we might get a possible 10 free polls towards the new style of event as well. So very interesting opportunity to get yourself a new 5-star out of this Lunar New Year event that's coming up. So, just stuff to look forward to. All right. Well, listen, I do appreciate you all tuning in. And of course, as always, if you like what I do, there is a little button at the bottom right. You can click on that. You'll find me easier in the future. I do release these State of the Game videos right around the 1st of every month. It depends on what's going on. My life can be pretty busy. So sometimes they're a couple days, behind the 1st of the month, but I do try to get them out right around that time. So you can expect to see them and enjoy this kind of content once a month from me. If it stays popular, I might consider some new ideas as to like either a weekly podcast style thing or maybe bi-weekly. I'm not sure where I'm going to go with that. But we'll figure it out. Anyway, my point is, I'll see you around, everyone. Have yourself a wonderful day, and thanks for tuning in.